A queen sits in her palace in Sparta. Her name is Helen. She's married to Menelaus, king of the city. By every standard the ancient world recognized, she's a faithful wife. She has a daughter. She has a household. She has a husband she hasn't betrayed. A stranger arrives at the palace gates, a prince from across the sea. Greek custom made hospitality sacred. A guest under your roof was protected by the gods. So the prince is welcomed. He eats at their table. He sleeps under their roof. Before long, the queen is gone. She's on a ship sailing east, with the man who was supposed to be her guest. Her husband sees the empty bed. He calls his brother. His brother calls on the oath sworn by Helen's former suitors, the men who had promised to defend her marriage. 1,000 ships are gathered. They sail for Troy. 10 years of war. Tens of thousands of men dead in the dirt on both sides. An ancient city burned to its foundations. And for the next 3,000 years after that, the woman gets the blame. The face that launched 1,000 ships, as if the launching was something she did. As if she stood on the deck of the lead ship and gave the order. As if Helen of Sparta, queen of a city she never asked to leave, was the one who decided any of it. She didn't simply choose Troy. The ancient version of the story is stranger than that, and it begins at a wedding she wasn't invited to, on a mountain she had never seen, years before Paris ever knocked on her door. How does a married queen end up on a ship to Troy? The standard answers usually go one of two ways. Either Helen fell for Paris or Paris kidnapped her. But both versions miss the part that matters. By the time Paris arrived in Sparta, Helen had already been promised to him. She just didn't know it. There is a wedding, a sea nymph and a mortal hero, Peleus and Thetis, the future parents of Achilles. Every god is invited. Almost every god. Eris, goddess of strife, is left off the guest list, so she comes anyway. She walks into the hall, throws a single object onto the banquet table and walks out. It is a golden apple, inscribed with 3 words, for the fairest. 3 goddesses immediately reach for it. Hera, queen of the gods, Athena, goddess of wisdom, Aphrodite, goddess of love. They argue. They demand a judgment. Zeus refuses. He's married to one of them, fathered another, and isn't stupid enough to choose between his wife and his daughter, and the goddess of beauty herself. So he sends them down to earth. He picks a mortal man to decide. The man is a young prince of Troy. His name is Paris. The 3 goddesses appear before him on a hillside. Each of them offers him a bribe. Hera offers him kingship over all of Asia. Power. Empire. Athena offers him wisdom and victory in every battle he will ever fight. Strategic genius, military glory. Aphrodite offers him a woman. Not just any woman, the most beautiful mortal alive, the most beautiful woman in the world. Stop here. Listen to what she actually offered. Ancient summaries sometimes call it the love of Helen. But notice who the promise is made to. Not Helen. Paris. Aphrodite isn't promising a woman who will want him, or fall for him, or choose him. She's promising him access to a specific, named, identifiable woman, regardless of whether the woman herself agrees to be delivered. And Aphrodite knew exactly who Helen was. The wife of a Greek king, with brothers, allies, and former suitors bound by oath. The gods on that hillside had every reason to know this wasn't a harmless gift. Paris chose Aphrodite. The deal was struck, and far away in a palace on a hill in Sparta, a queen went on living her life, folding linens, raising her daughter, sleeping next to her husband, completely unaware that she had just been given away as a prize. Modern audiences hear goddess of love and think romance. But in Greek poetry, Eros could feel like sickness, madness, a force that made people betray homes, vows, and themselves. Sappho called it bittersweet, sweet and destructive at once. So when Aphrodite promised Paris Helen, she wasn't promising courtship, she was promising possession. And what she promised Paris, she would impose on Helen. Paris arrives in Sparta. He stays as a guest in Menelaus's palace, and then, depending on which ancient source you read, Helen leaves with him. Even the ancient writers couldn't agree on what happened that night. Some sources say she went willingly, seduced by his beauty. Some say he carried her off by force. Some say Aphrodite struck her with desire she couldn't resist. They couldn't even agree on whether Helen had a choice. In the mainstream version of the story, what came next was this. Menelaus returned to find Helen gone. He called the oath. The kings of Greece sailed for Troy. The 10-year siege began, and Helen was inside the city watching a war her supposed beauty supposedly caused. And this brings us to the part I think most people would be shocked to learn is actually in the Iliad. Book 3. Paris is on the battlefield fighting Menelaus, Helen's actual husband, the man who came to take her home. Menelaus is winning. He has Paris by the helmet. He's about to drag him across the field and kill him. Then Aphrodite saves Paris. She snatches him off the battlefield, wraps him in mist, and drops him safely back in his bedroom. Then she goes to find Helen. She tells Helen to go to Paris's bed, and Helen, and this is in the text, this is Homer, refuses. She says no. She says she won't go, she won't serve his bed. The women of Troy will laugh at her. Her heart is sick, she has no joy left. And just to be clear, this is actually in the source. Aphrodite doesn't gently persuade Helen. She threatens her. She tells Helen not to provoke her. She says she can hate her as terribly as she now loves her. She says she can abandon her to be hated by Greeks and Trojans alike. Helen goes. Homer says she goes silent, frightened, wrapped in her veil, led by the goddess. She tried to stop. She was not allowed to stop. Aphrodite is remembered as the goddess of love. But the myth's new love was not always gentle. She was what desire looks like when it stops being yours. She handed Helen to Paris like a trophy. She handed Paris to a war he wasn't built to survive. She handed both of them to 3,000 years of storytelling that got the story backwards. Helen didn't launch 1,000 ships. She was the woman the goddess wouldn't let go home.